The rifle shot cracked through the morning air like thunder, and the bullet tore past the woman lying face down in the mud, missing her ear by inches. Garrett Ashford's boot connected with her back, driving her deeper into the black puddle. "Get down, you stupid wannabe! This ain't no place for little girls playing soldier." Laughter erupted from the death squad. 5 elite snipers circling their prey like wolves. Wyatt Brennan, the second in command with his perpetual sneer, shook his head in disgust. 5'2", 90 pounds soaking wet. What a joke. Get her out of here before someone gets hurt. Evelyn Blackwood remained motionless in the mud, eyes closed, dirt caking her face. Her small fingers trembled as they gripped the rifle someone had sabotaged. The barrel bent just enough to make accurate shooting impossible. She didn't resist when Garrett yanked the weapon from her hands and threw it into the dirt. $20 says she quits before lunch, a voice called out. "Make it 50. I bet she cries first," another responded. The morning sun at Fort Bragg's Special Operations Sniper Course cast long shadows across the qualification range, where only 2% of candidates would ever pass. But in the brief silence between the cruel laughter, a detail flashed by unnoticed. The way her fingers had traced the damaged barrel, measuring the deviation to the millimeter with practiced precision. In 47 minutes, the seemingly insignificant moment would determine the fate of 23 people. 36 hours earlier, the beat-up Honda Accord rolled through Fort Bragg's main gate at exactly 0430 hours. Its windshield bore a crack that spiderwebbed across the passenger side, and the exhaust pipe rattled with every bump. Behind the wheel sat Evelyn Blackwood, 27 years old, 5'2", with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun so tight it made her temples ache. She parked in the furthest corner of the lot, away from the row of lifted trucks with unit stickers plastered across their rear windows. Diesel engines rumbled. Men in tight black t-shirts strutted between vehicles, their laughter carrying across the pre-dawn darkness. Evie killed the engine and sat in silence for 10 seconds. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, steady despite the cold. On the passenger seat lay a field manual, its cover faded to gray, the pages yellowed and dog-eared. The printing date read 1952, Korean War era. It had belonged to her grandfather, though she'd never met him. He died before she was born, before her mother went underground. She picked up the manual, traced her fingers over the embossed letters on the cover. Then she tucked it into her range bag and stepped out into the November morning. The death squad noticed her immediately. Garrett Ashford led them like he owned the place. 6'4" of muscle and arrogance, his shaved head gleaming under the parking lot lights. Behind him came Wyatt Brennan with his sharp features and sharper tongue, Cole Hendricks spinning a combat knife between his fingers, Derek Sullivan cracking his knuckles, and Blake Thornton bringing up the rear, quieter than the others, but no less intimidating. They commanded the center of the parking lot, their voices filling the space with stories of confirmed kills and impossible shots. "Check it out," Wyatt said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Princess just arrived." Evie shouldered her range bag and walked toward the building. She didn't hurry, didn't slow down, just maintained a steady pace, her boots making soft contact with the pavement. Heel to toe roll. Silent movement ingrained by years of practice she wasn't supposed to have. "Hey, sweetheart," Garrett called out. "You lost? Daycare's across base." The others laughed. Derek wolf whistled. Cole made a show of looking her up and down. Evie kept walking. "I'm talking to you, recruit." Garrett's voice carried an edge now. Disrespect wrapped in false concern. "This is Special Operations Sniper School. You sure you're in the right place?" She stopped, turned, met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Not defiance, not fear, just an absence of reaction that didn't fit with her appearance. "Positive," she said. Her voice was lower than they expected, steady. Then she walked inside, leaving them staring after her. Master Sergeant Ellis Whitfield, 65 years old, with a Gulf War combat action ribbon on his chest, watched the exchange from the building's entrance. He'd been observing since she pulled in. Noticed how she'd parked with the nose facing out. Exit strategy. Noticed how her eyes had swept the parking lot before getting out of the car. Threat assessment. Noticed that Korean War field manual. Old school, he thought. Respectable. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to Colonel Nathaniel Hargrove. You need to see this one. The mess hall at 0500 hours smelled of industrial coffee and powdered eggs. Evie sat alone in the furthest corner, her back to the wall, eyes tracking every entrance and exit. The coffee was terrible, the eggs worse, but she ate mechanically, fueling her body for what was coming. That's when the death squad made their entrance. Garrett led them through the double doors like Caesar returned. A female candidate named Iris Pemberton approached Evie's table with her tray, moving quickly, trying to slip in unnoticed. Don't even think about it, Garrett's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. Losers sit alone, winners sit with winners. Iris hesitated, shot Evie an apologetic glance, then retreated to another table. Evie didn't react. She continued eating, but her peripheral vision caught Garrett's approach. He loomed over her table, his shadow falling across her tray. Well, look what crawled out of the recruitment office. He planted his hands on the table, leaning in close. You lost, sweetheart? Mall's that way. She looked up, met his eyes briefly, then returned to her food. Something in that glance made Garrett pause. Not defiance exactly, but an absence of fear that didn't fit with her mousy appearance. Like she'd already calculated a dozen ways to put him on the ground and decided none of them were worth the effort. I'm talking to you, recruit. He slammed his palm on the table, making her juice cup jump. Still, she didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly reached out and steadied the cup, then took another bite of eggs. The calculated disrespect infuriated him. You deaf as well as dumb? He grabbed her tray and flipped it. Scrambled eggs and coffee cascaded onto her uniform. The mess hall erupted in laughter and applause. Evie sat perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then she stood, picked up the tray, and walked to the cleanup station. No hurry, no anger, just mechanical efficiency. As she passed the death squad's table, her eyes swept across their position. Whitfield, observing from the doorway, noticed something odd. She'd automatically calculated firing angles from her seat to the windows. Muscle memory. He pulled out his phone again. She's sorting defective rounds by hand, pre-identifying them. This isn't beginner luck. 05:30 hours. Found them walking to the range in the pre-dawn darkness. Instructor Silas Kane strutted at the front of the 43 candidates, his voice carrying across the cold morning air like a drill sergeant's cadence. Today's initial qual, 1,000-yard shots with 15-knot crosswinds. Half of you won't make it past lunch. The other half will wish they hadn't. Kane was 58 years old, lean as a whip, with eyes that had seen things no training manual could prepare you for. 18 months as a POW in Iraq during the Gulf War had carved something hollow out of his soul and filled it with ice. Garrett deliberately bumped into Evie, sending her stumbling. His coffee cup somehow tipped, splashing across her range bag. Oops, butterfingers. More laughter from his squad. Evie steadied herself and kept walking. She didn't shake the bag or try to salvage her gear. She simply tilted it slightly, letting the coffee drain out the bottom corner. Her face remained expressionless. Whitfield noticed her gait, too quiet for a civilian. Heel-to-toe roll that made almost no sound on the gravel. At 600 hours, they reached the range for equipment check-in. The armorer, a grizzled staff sergeant named Cooper, handed out rifle assignments with all the enthusiasm of someone dispensing prison sentences. The death squad got primo equipment. New Remington 700s with Night Force scopes that cost more than Evie's car. Evie got serial number 13, a Barrett M82 that looked like it had survived Iraq, Afghanistan, and possibly Korea. The barrel showed visible wear. The scope mount had been repaired with electrical tape. Barrels got some wear, Cooper understated, knowing full well the rifle was barely serviceable. Scope might need adjustment. Translation: good luck hitting the broadside of a barn. Her ammunition allocation was equally suspect. Match-grade rounds, sure, but from 3 different lots with varying powder loads. Any real sniper would know this meant constant adjustments between shots, nearly impossible to maintain consistency. Station 13, Kane announced with barely concealed satisfaction. Far right, the worst position on the range. Full sun in her face by mid-morning. Crosswinds amplified by the gap in the berms, a concrete barrier that would trap her brass and powder residue, creating a personal gas cloud with every shot. Evie accepted it all without comment. She carried her rifle to the station and began her setup. That's when the first surprise occurred. Despite the equipment sabotage, she methodically sorted each round by weight, using nothing but her hands to detect the slight differences. Iris, setting up at Station 12, watched in fascination as Evie arranged them in specific order. "Hey, Princess," Garrett called out, generating another wave of laughter. "Nail salons that way. Maybe they can fix those broke-ass fingernails while you're at it." The warm-up was set for 100 yards. Child's play for any trained shooter. Garrett went first, naturally. He made a show of his preparation, adjusting his scope with theatrical precision, controlling his breathing loudly enough for everyone to hear. 10 shots, 10 bullseyes. He stood up, arms raised like a prize fighter. "That's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. Death Squad representing." High fives all around, Kane nodding approval. Evie's turn. She took 3 full minutes adjusting her decrepit scope, ignoring the snickers and comments. When she finally fired, the results seemed to confirm everyone's assumptions. 7 hits out of 10, scattered across the target. But Whitfield frowned, pulling out his spotting scope for a closer look. The 7 hits weren't scattered at all. They were all through the same hole, slightly off-center. The 3 misses had been wild, way off target. He walked down range during the ceasefire to inspect. "I'll be damned," he muttered. The 3 missed shots showed keyholing. The bullets had tumbled in flight. Bad ammunition, not bad shooting. And she'd somehow identified which rounds were defective and grouped them at the end of her magazine. By 0700 hours, they'd moved to the 500-yard qualification. The wind had picked up to 20 knots with unpredictable gusts. This was where real skill emerged, where the pretenders got exposed and the shooters proved themselves. Kane's group made sure to conduct loud conversations whenever Evie was in her shooting position. "So I told the Haji, you can run, but you'll just die tired." Wyatt's story carried clearly across the range. 1 shot, 900 meters, dude's head just... Evie was about to squeeze the trigger when Kane accidentally kicked her rifle bipod. "Oops, sorry, recruit. Butterfingers must be contagious." The rifle jerked. Her shot went wide. She had to start her breathing cycle all over again. 5 minutes gone, 9 shots remaining, 8 minutes left on the clock. During her next attempt, Cole casually loosened her bipod screws while pretending to adjust his own equipment. Derek stumbled past her position, kicking sand into her face just as she was about to fire. Wyatt somehow managed to spill water on her shooting mat, creating a muddy mess. Despite the sabotage, Evie scored 8 out of 10 hits. Garrett's fury was palpable. He'd only managed 7 in the same conditions, even with perfect equipment and no interference. That's when Colonel Nathaniel Hargrove arrived. The commanding officer of the Advanced Sniper Program rarely observed initial qualifications. But Whitfield's messages had drawn him out this morning. He took position in the observation tower, binoculars trained on the range. At 68 years old, Hargrove walked with a cane, the result of shrapnel that had torn through his left leg during the Korean War. His chest bore ribbons most soldiers only saw in history books: Medal of Honor, Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts. He'd served in Korea, done classified work during the Cold War, and ended his active career as a spotter in Desert Storm. He'd seen shooters, real shooters, the kind that came along once in a generation. He trained his binoculars on Station 13 and watched Evie work. 0800 hours brought an unexpected development. Garrett, sensing an opportunity to impress the colonel, announced a special challenge to the group. All right, ladies, moving targets at 750. Loser cleans the entire armory for a month. Who's got the balls? He looked directly at Evie. How about it, princess? Unless you're scared of a little competition. Evie looked up from her rifle. For the first time all morning, she spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. Terms. Her voice was lower than expected, steady. Garrett blinked, momentarily thrown off by her acceptance. 5 targets, 30 seconds, standard silhouettes, age before beauty, she replied quietly, generating surprised chuckles from some candidates. Garrett's face reddened. He took position with exaggerated confidence, making sure the colonel could see his form. The targets began their lateral movement, moderate speed, predictable pattern. He fired rapidly, trusting his instincts in superior equipment. 4 hits out of 5. He jumped up, pumping his fist. Beat that, recruit. Kane helped Evie load her magazine, and she noticed immediately that something was wrong. The rounds were mixed, some heavy match grade, some lighter training rounds. The weight differences would throw off her trajectory calculations significantly. She looked at Kane, who smirked. Problem, recruit? She said nothing but began arranging the rounds in her magazine in a specific order, heaviest to lightest. The death squad laughed. What's wrong, princess? Trying to make them prettier? Evie took her position. The spotters watched through their scopes as she acquired the first target. Her body went unnaturally still. Even her breathing seemed to stop. She fired, hit center mass. She worked the bolt with mechanical precision, already tracking the second target. The crosswind gusted suddenly, but she'd anticipated it, adjusting mid-sight picture. Second shot, second hit. By the third shot, the laughter had died. By the fourth, Garrett's triumphant expression had faded. When the fifth target fell with a perfect center hit, the range was silent, except for the distant clang of steel on steel. Whitfield checked his stopwatch. 19 seconds, 5 for 5, with mixed ammunition and sabotaged equipment. That's impossible, someone whispered. Not with those loads. In the observation tower, Colonel Hargrove lowered his binoculars slowly. Something about her shooting rhythm nagged at him. 7 seconds acquire, 7 seconds hold, 3 seconds reset, 7-7-3 interval. Where had he seen that pattern before? His hands started shaking. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. Found one from 1991. Desert Storm, Iraq. Him standing next to a female sniper, her face obscured by a sand scarf in tactical paint. Only her dog tags were visible. Captain D. Blackwood, Ghost. The shooting rhythm had been hers, a pattern so distinctive, so refined through thousands of repetitions that it became a signature. Like a fingerprint. But Ghost was dead, had been for 33 years. He'd been at her memorial service, had saluted the empty casket because they'd never recovered her body from the Iraqi ambush that took her life. He zoomed in on the photo, studying the visible features. The eyes, the stance, the way she held her rifle. Then he looked down at the range, at the small woman in the oversized uniform who just made 5 impossible shots in 19 seconds. His cane clattered to the floor. By 0900 hours, the psychological warfare had escalated to physical intimidation. Garrett cornered Evie at the equipment shed during a break. Wyatt and Cole flanked her, body-checking her against the wall. Accidents happen on ranges, sweetheart, Garrett said, his voice low and threatening. Would be a real shame if someone got hurt because they didn't know their place. Evie didn't flinch, but her eyes automatically mapped exits. Door 12 feet, window 8 feet, gap between Wyatt and Cole approximately 18 inches. You listening to me? Garrett grabbed her right wrist. His thumb pressed into scar tissue that ran from her wrist to her elbow. What's this? Try to kill yourself when you realize you'll never be good enough? For the first time, something flickered in Evie's eyes. Not fear, something colder. She looked directly at Garrett, and he unconsciously took a half step back. Then the moment passed, and she was just a small woman surrounded by large men again. "I need to clean my rifle," she said quietly. "Yeah, you do that." Garrett released her wrist. "Clean it real good. Might be the last time you touch one." Inside the armory, Evie disassembled her rifle with practiced efficiency. Even surrounded by hostile men, her hands never shook. The breakdown took exactly 12 seconds. She didn't hurry, didn't fumble, just worked with mechanical precision that spoke of thousands of repetitions. Cole noticed first. "Yo, she's pretty fast with that." "So what?" Derek scoffed. "My girlfriend can break down her makeup kit fast too." But Wyatt was frowning. "No, look at her trigger finger. See how she's indexed it along the receiver? That's not civilian training." Blake Thornton, the quietest of the death squad, watched from the doorway. Something about the whole situation bothered him. Maybe it was the way Evie never complained, never begged, just endured it all with quiet dignity. Or maybe it was the memory of his younger brother, dead at 19 from a hazing incident gone wrong. He'd promised himself he'd never be part of something like that again. He watched Evie work, and guilt gnawed at his gut. Colonel Hargrove quietly initiated a background check on Evelyn Blackwood. The results came back within 30 minutes. Born in Ohio, unremarkable school records, 2 years of community college, worked at a sporting goods store. It was a legend. A well-crafted one, but a legend nonetheless. He pulled Whitfield aside during the lunch break. "That recruit, Blackwood, something familiar about her." Whitfield nodded. "Sir, I've been watching her all morning. That's not civilian movement. That's trained operator." "The 7-7-3 interval," Hargrove said quietly. "I've only seen one person shoot with that rhythm." "Who, sir?" Hargrove pulled out his phone, showed Whitfield the 1991 photo. "Captain Diane Blackwood, call sign Ghost, my spotter in Desert Storm. 73 confirmed kills. Best shooter I ever worked with." Whitfield studied the photo. "What happened to her?" "Iraqi ambush, October 1991. Entire convoy destroyed. Body never recovered." Hargrove's voice was tight. "I was at her memorial service. Empty casket, 21-gun salute, the whole 9 yards." "Sir, that was 33 years ago." "I know. You think—" "I don't know what to think, Sergeant, but that recruit is shooting with ghost rhythm, and nobody could fake that. It takes years to develop, decades." They watched Evie eating alone in the corner of the mess hall, her back to the wall, eyes on the exits. "Keep an eye on her," Hargrove said. "And I want the video from today's shooting, all of it." The afternoon brought the shooting under duress test. Candidates had to run 400 meters in full gear, then engage targets within 60 seconds while their heart rates were still elevated. Most struggled to control their breathing, their shots wild as their bodies demanded oxygen. Garrett finished his run and dropped prone, his chest heaving like a bellows. The range safety officer checked his vitals. Heart rate 120, respiratory rate 28. It took him 90 seconds to get his first shot off. Evie finished her run and assumed her shooting position. The RSO frowned at his monitor. "Equipment malfunction. No way." Whitfield checked the backup monitor. "Same reading, sir. Her heart rate's 45. They watched as Evie's breathing immediately fell into a controlled pattern. She fired her first shot 30 seconds after finishing the run. Her heart rate never exceeded 50. "That's not natural," Kane muttered. "Nobody recovers that fast." But Hargrove, watching from the tower, had seen it before. Combat veterans who'd learned to control their autonomic responses, who could drop their heart rates on command. It took years of training and usually came with a price. Experiences that forced you to master your body or die. The kind of training that wasn't available to civilians. The kind of training Ghost had mastered in the deserts of Iraq. At 1,400 hours, they moved to advanced ballistics testing. The candidates had to calculate complex shots accounting for wind, elevation, humidity, barometric pressure, and the Coriolis effect. Most pulled out calculators and reference cards, frantically computing solutions. Evie wrote her solutions directly on the worksheet. No calculator, no references. Just neat rows of equations that included corrections most snipers didn't learn until advanced school. When she factored in the Magnus effect on spin drift, Whitfield couldn't stay quiet. "Where did you learn that formula?" She looked up, seeming to realize her mistake. "I read it in a book." "What book?" Kane demanded. "That's classified information." "I don't remember the title." She lowered her eyes, playing flustered. "I read a lot." But the damage was done. Her formula included a correction factor that had only been developed 3 years ago by SOCOM's Advanced Marksmanship Unit. No civilian book would have it. Kane grabbed the worksheet, studying it with narrowed eyes. Then he looked at Hargrove, who'd descended from the tower and was walking toward them. "Colonel," Kane said carefully, "we might have a situation here." The equipment shed at 1600 hours was dim and smelled of gun oil and brass. Evie was inventorying her gear when the door opened behind her. She knew who it was before she turned around. The footsteps were distinctive, slow, deliberate, the tap of a cane on concrete. Colonel Nathaniel Hargrove stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun. His face was in shadow, but she could feel the intensity of his gaze. "Who taught you 773 breathing?" His voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath she heard something else, something raw. Evie set down the cleaning rod she'd been holding. "My mother, before she died." Hargrove stepped into the shed. The door swung shut behind him. Now they were alone in the shadows, and the weight of the moment pressed down like a physical thing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Faded, creased from being carried for 3 decades. He held it out to her. The image showed 2 people in desert camouflage. 1991, Iraq. A young man, maybe 35, without the cane or the gray hair, and next to him, a woman in tactical gear, her face obscured by a sand scarf and dust. But her dog tags were visible. Captain D. Blackwood, Ghost. Evie's hands trembled as she took the photo. She traced her fingers over her mother's image. The woman she'd never really known. The woman who'd trained her in secret, who'd died when Evie was 25, who'd made her promise with her last breath to find this man. "Your mother," Hargrove said, and his voice cracked, "was Captain Diane Ghost Blackwood, my spotter in Desert Storm, the best shooter I ever worked with, the best friend I ever had." Tears streamed down Evie's face. She couldn't stop them. "She said you'd recognize the rhythm," Evie whispered. "She said if I ever needed help, if I ever found myself in over my head, to find Colonel Nathaniel Hargrove. She said you'd know, you'd understand." Hargrove's cane clattered to the floor. He gripped the workbench for support, his knuckles white. "She's alive?" "No, sir. She died 5 years ago. Cancer." The word hit him like a bullet. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he looked every one of his 68 years. "She survived the ambush," Evie continued, "went underground, classified reasons she never fully explained to me, had me in 1992, trained me herself, taught me everything she knew, the 773 rhythm, the ballistics calculations, how to sort ammunition by hand, how to read wind, how to become a ghost. Why didn't she contact me? She wanted to. God, Colonel, she talked about you all the time, but she said it was too dangerous, that if certain people knew she was alive, they'd come for her, and they'd come for me." Hargrove opened his eyes. They were wet, but his jaw was set. "What people?" She never said, but on her deathbed she told me that if I joined the military, if I pursued this path, I needed to find you. She said there was something wrong in the sniper program. People dying who shouldn't be dying. And she said you'd be able to see it, that you'd need help proving it. "Silas Kane," Hargrove said immediately. Evie nodded. She mentioned his name once, said he came back from the Gulf War broken. That POW camp destroyed something in him. Hargrove picked up his cane, his mind racing. 6 of his top graduates have been killed in action over the past 2 years, all of them within a year of graduating. All of them in circumstances that shouldn't have been fatal. Wrong intelligence, compromised positions. It's statistically impossible. You think he's selling them out? I know he is, but I can't prove it. I'm old, Evie. I'm a relic from Korea in the Cold War. Command looks at me and sees a dinosaur with a Medal of Honor and a cane. They humor me. They don't listen. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Diane in every feature. The same determination, the same quiet strength. But they might listen to you, he said, if we can prove it, if we can catch him in the act. How? Tonight, navigation exercise through Training Area 7. Kane's setting something up. I can feel it. The death squad volunteered to man checkpoints, and he approved it too quickly, too eagerly. A trap. For you specifically, they're going to try to break you, humiliate you, maybe worse. Evie picked up the photo of her mother, studied it one more time, then handed it back to Hargrove. Then I'll walk into the trap, she said, and when they spring it, we'll be ready. Evie, my mother spent 33 years hiding, living in shadows, never able to be who she really was. I won't do that, Colonel. I won't hide. If Kane is selling out our people, if he's getting soldiers killed, then he needs to be stopped. And if that means using myself as bait, so be it. Hargrove studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small device, an emergency beacon, and a card with handwritten codes. If things go wrong, he said, activate this. I'll be watching. He handed her the card. Memorize these. Code Black 7 Alpha gives you emergency authorization. Ghost protocol from your mother's era. Still active in the system because I never deactivated it. Evie studied the card, committed it to memory, then handed it back. You kept it active for 33 years? Hoped I'd never need it. Hoped even more that if I did, it would be her using it. He paused. 773 rhythm, just like she taught you. At 1800 hours, the night navigation exercise began with a briefing in the classroom. Kane stood at the front, a map of Training Area 7 projected on the screen behind him. 43 candidates, 43 routes, solo navigation, no partners. You'll hit 3 checkpoints, get your card stamped, return by 0200 hours. Miss a checkpoint or fail to return on time, you're disqualified. Any questions? Evie studied her route. It went through the deepest part of the training area, past the old bunkers from the 1960s, through terrain that had been abandoned for decades. Garrett and his squad volunteered to man Checkpoint 3. Kane approved with a smile. Blake Thornton caught Evie's eye as they filed out of the classroom. He looked like he wanted to say something. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally, he pulled her aside in the hallway. Listen, I don't have much time. Tonight at Checkpoint 3, there's an old bunker. They're planning to... I know, Evie said quietly. Blake stared at her. You know? Then why are you going along with it? Because sometimes you have to enter the trap to spring it. She studied his face, saw the guilt eating at him. But thank you. Your brother would be proud. Blake went white. How do you know about my brother? The same way I know you've been fighting Garrett's influence all week. The same way I know you keep his picture in your left chest pocket. Some things you can't hide from someone who's trained to observe. She handed him something, a small flashlight. You'll want to stay with the main group tonight, all of them. Don't let them split up. Why? But she was already walking away, disappearing into the evening shadows like smoke. Blake looked down at the flashlight in his hand, turned it over. On the bottom, engraved in tiny letters, were the words, Ghost Protocol. As the sun set over Fort Bragg, Evie stood in her barracks room, packing her gear. The other female candidates had already left for the exercise. She was alone. She pulled out the old Korean War field manual, opened it to the inside cover. There, in faded ink, was an inscription. To my daughter Diane, may you always find your way home, Dad. And below that, in different handwriting, more recent, to my daughter Evelyn, may you always know you're not alone, Mom. Evie traced her fingers over her mother's handwriting. Then she tucked the manual into her pack and shouldered her gear. Outside, Colonel Hargrove waited in an unmarked vehicle, engine idling. When she emerged from the barracks, he rolled down the window. "You sure about this?" he asked. "As sure as my mother was when she made that 800-yard shot to save your convoy." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She told you about that?" "She told me everything, Colonel. Every mission, every shot, every person she saved, including you." "She saved a lot of people, Evie. 73 confirmed kills, each one preventing something worse. Each one protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves." "Then let's make sure her legacy continues. Let's save some people tonight." Hargrove handed her a small radio, frequency already set. "I'll be watching from a distance. The beacon if things get critical, the radio if you need guidance." Evie nodded and disappeared into the darkness, heading for Training Area 7. Behind her, Hargrove spoke into his own radio. "Anderson, we have a situation developing. I'm going to need QRF on standby and get me aerial surveillance over Training Area 7. Sir, is this really necessary for a navigation exercise?" "Just do it, Colonel. Trust me. Before this night is over, we're going to need every resource we have." He put the vehicle in gear and drove toward the observation post that overlooked the training area. The same post he'd used in 1991 before deploying to Iraq. Before meeting a young captain named Diane Blackwood, who would become the best spotter he'd ever known, and who, apparently, had spent the last 33 years preparing her daughter to finish what she'd started. The sun disappeared below the horizon. Darkness fell over Fort Bragg like a curtain, and somewhere in the shadows, Death Squad waited at Checkpoint 3 with their trap. They had no idea they were the ones being hunted. The November night was cold and moonless. Evie moved through Training Area 7 like water flowing downhill, following the path of least resistance, making no sound. Her boots found purchase on exposed roots and stones, avoiding the dead leaves that would crackle and announce her presence. She wasn't following the marked route. Instead, she paralleled it, staying 50 meters to the left, using the terrain to mask her movement. The night vision device she'd been issued was deliberately outdated, the tube washed out and grainy. She'd left it in her pack after the first 10 minutes and relied on her natural night vision instead. Her mother had taught her that. Let your eyes adjust. Trust your other senses. Technology fails, training endures. Checkpoint 1 had been uneventful. A bored private manning a folding table, stamping navigation cards without really looking at the candidates. Evie had approached from an unexpected angle, gotten her stamp, and melted back into the darkness before he'd fully registered her presence. Checkpoint 2 was the same. Quick in, quick out, no conversation. But Checkpoint 3 was different. She could feel it a quarter-mile out. The wrongness in the air, the way the normal night sounds of the training area, the distant calls of owls and the rustle of small animals, had gone silent. Predators were near. Evie climbed a tall pine 50 meters from the checkpoint's reported location, moved slowly, testing each branch before committing her weight. At 30 feet, she found a solid perch and settled in to observe. Through the trees, she could see the old bunker, a relic from the Cold War era, built in the 1960s when Fort Bragg had been preparing for scenarios that thankfully never materialized. The steel door stood open, a black rectangle against the darker night, inviting, obvious, and around it, 4 shadows waited. Garrett Ashford, Wyatt Brennan, Cole Hendricks, Derek Sullivan, the Death Squad minus Blake Thornton. They'd positioned themselves in a loose perimeter, trying to look casual but failing. Their body language was tense, anticipatory. Evie could have avoided them entirely, Could have taken an alternate route, hit a different checkpoint, filed a complaint about the modified course. But that wasn't why she was here. She pulled out the small radio Colonel Hargrove had given her, keyed it once, twice, 3 times. The signal they'd agreed on. I'm in position. I see the trap. A single click came back. Acknowledged. I'm watching. Evie descended from the tree as silently as she'd climbed it. She circled wide, approaching from the direction her marked route would bring her. Made just enough noise, stepped on just enough dry leaves to announce her presence. Became the prey, walking into the trap. She emerged from the tree line, 20 yards from the bunker. Her flashlight beam swept across the checkpoint marker. Checkpoint 3. Blackwood checking in. The death squad materialized from the shadows like they'd been waiting for a cue, which of course they had been. Garrett stepped forward holding the stamp and cards, but his smile was predatory. Wrong. Well, right on time, princess. Impressive navigation for someone who probably gets lost in the mall. The others laughed. Wyatt moved to her left, Cole to her right, Derek behind. Classic encirclement. Evie's eyes tracked them all, calculating distances, angles, threat levels, but her face remained neutral, waiting. I need my card stamped, she said quietly, for my navigation record. Oh, you'll get stamped all right, Garrett said. He gestured to the bunker. But first, we've got a special checkpoint requirement for female candidates. Need to verify you can handle confined spaces, stress positions. You know, the stuff real soldiers deal with. That's not in the training manual. It is now. Wyatt grabbed her arms. Cole took her rifle. Derek her pack. Evie didn't resist. Let them manhandle her toward the bunker's entrance. Let them think they were in control. As they forced her toward the door, she caught Garrett's wrist. Just for a moment. Looked him dead in the eye. 6 hours, she said quietly. You might want to stay together. All of you. Garrett blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Just advice. Tick-tock. Then she stepped into the bunker willingly, and they slammed the steel door behind her. The locking bar dropped into place with a solid clang that echoed in the night. Outside, the death squad stood in silence for a moment. That was weird, Cole finally said. The way she just went in. She's trying to psych us out, Garrett said, but his voice lacked conviction. Trying to act tough. Give it an hour. She'll be screaming to get out. What did she mean? 6 hours? Derek asked. Nothing. Mind games. Come on, let's set up the evidence. Garrett pulled out printed pages from his pack. Sniper manual excerpts with fake notes in the margins, designed to look like Evie had been cheating. We plant these in her gear, discover them during the search when she doesn't return. Clean, simple, she gets disqualified for academic dishonesty. But Wyatt was staring at the bunker door. I don't like this. Something feels off. You going soft? Garrett challenged. No, I'm being smart. That girl took our best shot and didn't even blink. Made 5 targets in 19 seconds with sabotaged ammo. And she walked into this bunker like she wanted to be here. So what? She's accepted defeat, knows she can't hack it. Or, Blake Thornton's voice came from the darkness, making them all jump. She's way more dangerous than you think. He emerged from the tree line, flashlight in hand. The same one Evie had given him. Blake, where the hell have you been? Garrett demanded. Thinking. About my brother. About what happened to him. About what we're doing right now. We're teaching her a lesson. We're hazing her, just like they hazed my brother before he died. And I swore I'd never be part of something like that again. The air between them crackled with tension. Garrett's hands clenched into fists. Then the first explosion shattered the night. Not from the bunker. From the main base, 2 miles northwest. A flash of orange light bloomed against the sky, followed 3 seconds later by the crack of detonation rolling across the landscape. They all froze. What the hell was that? Cole whispered. Then the siren started. Base-wide alert. the distinctive wail of FPCON Delta, the highest threat level. And through the trees they could hear it, automatic weapons fire, not training blanks, real ammunition. The distinctive chatter of AK-47s. Derek's radio crackled to life. Instructor Kane's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill. We have multiple hostiles inside the wire. 12 to 15 tangos heading for the ammunition depot. All sniper candidates report to Rally Point Alpha immediately. Garrett stared at the radio, then at the bunker, then at his squad. His face had gone pale. "Oh God," he breathed. "We just locked our only real soldier in a bunker with no way to communicate." More explosions. Closer now. The distinctive thump of RPG impacts. Screaming in the distance. The base was under attack, and they were 2 miles from safety, unarmed except for their navigation gear, watching their defensive perimeter collapse. "We have to let her out," Blake said. They rushed to the bunker door. Garrett grabbed the locking bar and pulled. It didn't move. "It's stuck." "You locked it from the outside, genius." Wyatt joined him, both of them pulling. The bar had settled into its bracket, rusted from decades of disuse. It wouldn't budge. Derek was on the radio calling for help, but the response was chaos. 3 guards confirmed KIA at the perimeter breach. Base security pinned down. Quick reaction force inbound but 20 minutes out. The sniper candidates were scattered across Training Area 7, unarmed, exposed, perfect targets. Cole kicked at the door. "Evie, can you hear me? We're trying to get you out." No response from inside. "She's probably passed out from panic," Garrett said, but his voice shook. The confident bully from this morning was gone, replaced by a scared kid who just realized how badly he'd screwed up. Then they heard it, a metallic click from inside the bunker. The door swung open slowly from within, and Evelyn Blackwood stepped out into the moonlight. She wasn't panicking, wasn't crying. Her eyes were calm, calculating, and completely different from the mousy recruit they'd tormented all day. In her hand was a crude lockpick, fashioned from wire and a piece of metal she'd found in the bunker's emergency supplies. "Where's the nearest weapons cache?" Her voice had changed, lower, commanding. This wasn't a question, it was an order. The death squad stared at her in shock. "What?" Garrett managed. "Weapons cache, emergency arms room. Every training area has one." "Where?" Her tone cut through their paralysis. Wyatt found himself answering automatically. "Building 7 Alpha, half a click northeast." "Show me, now." She was already moving, and they followed without thinking. Something in her voice, her bearing, her absolute certainty triggered their training. This was someone who knew what they were doing. This was someone who could get them through this alive. They ran through the darkness, and Evie set a pace that should have been impossible for someone her size. But she moved like the night was her natural element, avoiding obstacles they couldn't see, taking a route that kept them in cover, away from the sounds of gunfire that were getting steadily closer. Colonel Hargrove's voice crackled in her hidden earpiece. "Evie, I have eyes on you. Emergency Arms Room 7 Alpha is 400 meters northeast. But Evie, there are hostile elements between you and—" "I know, Colonel. Keep the QRF back. I need those weapons first." "What are you planning?" "What my mother would do. What you taught her to do." Hargrove's voice came through again, closer this time. "Evie, I'm 2 minutes out, heading to 7 Alpha now." She clicked off and kept running. They reached the arms room at 19:15 hours. It was a nondescript concrete building that most candidates didn't even know existed. A sergeant sat inside, monitoring security cameras, looking increasingly panicked as reports flooded in. "No authorization for arms issue," he said when they burst through the door. "I can't just hand out—" "Code Black 7 Alpha," Evie said. The sergeant's eyes widened. He looked at his computer screen, typed something, then looked at Evie again, really looked at her. His face went pale. "Ma'am, that code is restricted to—" "I know what it's restricted to, Sergeant. Open the arms room now." He didn't ask any more questions, just unlocked the heavy door and stepped aside. The death squad followed Evie into the arsenal. Modern rifles lined the walls. M4s, SCARs, precision rifles with advanced optics. Evie walked past all of them, heading to the back of the room where a locked case sat separate from the others. She read the label. Restricted, historical, authorized personnel only. "Sergeant," she called back, "override code 773. The sergeant's hands shook as he typed. The case lock clicked open. Inside was a single rifle, Macmillan TAC 338. The finish was worn from years of use, but the weapon had been meticulously maintained. Serial number PS-001 was engraved on the receiver. Phantom Scout 001. Evie's hands trembled as she lifted the rifle. It was heavier than her mother had described, or maybe that was just the weight of legacy. Carved into the stock, barely visible, were initials, DB. "Your mother's rifle." Colonel Hargrove's voice came from the doorway. He'd arrived 30 seconds after them, moving faster than his age should allow. He stood there in full combat gear despite his years, his cane nowhere in sight. In his hands was a radio and a tablet showing tactical displays. "I kept it in inventory for 33 years. Against regulations, against common sense. But I knew. Somehow I knew she'd need it again." Evie ran her fingers over the stock, over her mother's initials. Tears streamed down her face, but her hands were steady as she checked the rifle's action. Perfect. Smooth as silk. "She used this in Desert Storm?" Evie asked. 73 confirmed kills, each one protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves. Hargrove pulled out ammunition. 338 Lapua Magnum, lot number matching the same production run from 1991. "Make it 74 tonight." He looked at the death squad, who stood frozen, trying to process what they were witnessing. "You boys stay here. Defend this position. No one gets these weapons except confirmed friendlies. Understood?" Garrett found his voice. "Colonel, what's happening? Who is she?" "She's the daughter of the best sniper I ever worked with. And tonight, she's all that stands between 12 hostiles and a whole lot of dead Americans." He turned to Evie. "You ready, Ghost?" She loaded the rifle, her movements automatic, muscle memory inherited through years of training. 773 rhythm, just like Mom taught me. "I'll spot for you, like old times. You spotted for my mother, not me. You're her daughter, same thing." He smiled. "Let's go to work." Evie turned to the death squad one last time. "Stay together. Defend this room. If anyone tries to take these weapons, you stop them. Clear?" Blake nodded. "Clear. And Blackwood, I'm sorry. For everything. Thank you for trying to warn me. Your brother would be proud." Then she and Hargrove were gone, disappearing into the night like ghosts. The death squad stood in silence, surrounded by weapons they didn't have authorization to use, listening to a battle they couldn't participate in, finally understanding that the woman they'd tormented all day was about to save their lives. "We're such idiots," Cole whispered. "Yeah," Garrett agreed. "We really are." Building 31 was the tallest structure on the north side of Fort Bragg. 6 stories of administrative offices, mostly empty at night. Evie reached it at 19:25 hours, with Hargrove 30 seconds behind her. His age showed in his breathing, but his mind was sharp as ever. "Main entrance is locked," he said. "We'll need to—" Evie was already scaling the maintenance ladder on the building's east side. One-handed, rifle slung across her back, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times in training. Hargrove watched her climb and saw Diane. Same build, same movement. 33 years collapsed into nothing. He took the stairs, his old wounds protesting but holding. By the time he reached the roof access door, Evie had already picked the lock and was setting up her position. The rooftop was graveled, crunching under their boots. Evie moved to the southern edge, where a low wall provided cover and stability. From here, she had clear lines of sight to the tree line, where muzzle flashes marked enemy positions. She built her shooting position in 20 seconds. No sandbags, no bipod, just her body positioned perfectly to absorb recoil, her breathing already falling into the rhythm her mother had drilled into her since childhood. Hargrove sat up next to her with a spotting scope and a tactical tablet, pulled up aerial drone footage, thermal imaging, radio intercepts. Wind 25 knots southwest, barometric pressure 29.8, temperature 68 degrees, humidity 70%. Copy, Evie said. Her voice had gone flat, emotionless. She was entering the zone her mother had called the bubble, where time slowed and everything except the target faded away. First priority target, Hargrove said, adjusting his scope. Enemy sniper, building 6 rooftop, 823 yards. He's got 2 of our response teams pinned, 4 wounded bleeding out in the open. Evie found him through her scope. Professional setup, good position, disciplined fire. This wasn't some terrorist with an AK. This was a trained operator. I see him, she said. Wind compensation 3.7 mils right. Your mother made this exact shot in a sandstorm, Hargrove said quietly. Desert storm, day 5, save my convoy. Evie's breathing cycle began. 7 seconds acquiring the target, calculating wind, distance, elevation. 7 seconds holding, letting her body settle. 3 seconds resetting between heartbeats, the rhythm her mother had perfected. The rhythm that had saved Hargrove's life 33 years ago. She fired between heartbeats. The suppressed rifle coughed once. 823 yards away, the hostile sniper's head snapped sideways. He slumped over his rifle, suddenly and completely dead. Good kill, Hargrove confirmed. Your mother would be proud. Displace. Evie was already moving. Rule 1 of sniper warfare. Never fire twice from the same location. She shifted 15 feet to the right, built a new position, acquired a new target. Machine gun team, Hargrove directed. 790 yards, traverse left 2 mils. They're suppressing the main gate, keeping reinforcements from entering. Through her scope, Evie saw them. 2 men with a PKM machine gun, laying down suppressing fire in controlled bursts. The gunner was partially exposed, confident in his cover. She made minute adjustments. Temperature differential over the asphalt parking lot would create thermals. Mirage effect. She compensated instinctively, muscle memory taking over. Your mother, Hargrove said as she settled into her shooting position. Desert Storm Day 3. Iraqi battalion had us pinned. She took out their company commander at 900 yards, saved 40 men. Evie fired. The gunner dropped mid-burst, his hands falling away from the weapon. The assistant gunner looked around wildly, trying to identify the threat, started to take over the gun. Evie worked the bolt with mechanical precision. Acquired, held, reset, second shot. The assistant gunner fell across his partner's body. Good kill, both targets, Hargrove confirmed. Displacing. In the Tactical Operations Center, Colonel Anderson watched through security cameras. The image quality wasn't great at this distance, but he could see enough. A lone figure on Building 31's roof, engaging targets with mechanical precision. Who is that? His operations officer demanded. Anderson pulled up the arms room access log. Emergency issue, 1927 hours. Macmillan TAC 338, serial PS001. His hands started shaking. He'd been at Fort Bragg in 1991, had known about the ghost, had been at the memorial service. Sir, the operations officer prompted, get me General Morrison, priority 1, actual to actual. Sir, with respect, this is an active combat situation. We need to focus on that rifle, Anderson pointed at the screen. Belonged to Captain Diane Blackwood. Call sign Ghost. 73 confirmed kills in Desert Storm. Best sniper this base has ever produced. She's been dead for 33 years. Then who's shooting it? Anderson watched another hostile fall in the camera feed. Perfect shot. Center mass. The same precision he remembered from Ghost's after-action reports. Either someone who learned from her or someone who is her. Either way, we need to give her room to work. On the rooftop, Evie had eliminated 9 hostiles in 11 minutes. Each shot was perfect. Center nervous system hits that dropped targets instantly. She moved constantly, never giving the enemy a chance to pinpoint her location. Hargrove monitored enemy radio frequencies through captured communications. The chatter was frightened, panicked. They came expecting easy targets, he said. Inside information ensured their success. Instead, they're being hunted by a ghost. Kane, Evie said between shots. He sold them the information. I know, I've been tracking his encrypted communications. He's coordinating with them, confirming candidate positions, marking targets. Why? 18 months in an Iraqi prison, torture, while men like me got promoted. He came back broken, angry, and he's been taking his revenge on every graduate he can sell out. Evie acquired her 10th target, an RPG team repositioning for a shot at the fuel depot. My mother saved you from people like this, she said. Now I'm saving people from Kane. The cycle continues. She fired 3 times in rapid succession. The RPG team went down before they could launch. Your mother, Hargrove said, his voice thick with emotion, used to say the same thing. We don't fight for glory. We fight so others don't have to. She lived that, died living it, and now you're carrying it forward. 11 down. How many left? 4 confirmed, 3 trying to retreat, 1 still coordinating. Their commander. Evie found him through her scope. 912 yards. Extreme range even for her rifle. He was screaming into his radio, demanding extraction, trying to rally his broken forces. The wind was shifting, rain starting to fall. The worst possible conditions for a long-range shot. Evie, Hargrove said carefully, that's beyond your mother's maximum range. 900 yards was her limit. This is 912 in shifting wind and rain. Then it's time to break her record, Evie said. For her, she built her position. Extended range required perfect form, perfect breathing, perfect timing. Wind 28 knots, gusting to 32, rain increasing, barometric pressure dropping. Hargrove fed her the data, but they both knew this shot was beyond calculation. This was instinct. This was the culmination of every hour her mother had spent training her. Trust the rifle, Hargrove said. Trust your training. Trust her. Evie entered the bubble completely. Time didn't just slow, it stopped. She could feel her heartbeat, could count the milliseconds between pulses, could sense the wind shifting, the rain pattern, the micro-adjustments needed. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. When you can't calculate the shot, feel it. Become the bullet. Know where it needs to go. She fired. The world held its breath. 912 yards away, the hostile commander's head exploded mid-transmission. He dropped like his strings had been cut. Hargrove stared through his spotting scope. Jesus Christ! 912 in shifting wind and rain. New base record. New everything record. The remaining 3 hostiles broke and ran for the tree line. Evie tracked them clinically. 3 shots, 3 bodies before they reached cover. Sector 7 clear, she said into Hargrove's radio. 12 tangos down, 14 rounds expended, ready for QRF to sweep. In the TOC, Colonel Anderson listened to her voice. Young, female, utterly professional. Who is she? He asked again. Whitfield had been listening the whole time. Sir, I think that's Blackwood, the recruit from this morning. The one they were hazing? The one who just saved this base. Anderson keyed his radio. Ghost, this is Anderson Actual. Identify yourself. There was a long pause. Then, Evelyn Blackwood, sir, recruit class 24 Alpha. Your call sign, recruit. Another pause. Then Colonel Hargrove's voice came through. Ghost protocol, sir. She's operating under Ghost protocol. Anderson closed his eyes. The Ghost protocol had been Diane Blackwood's emergency authorization, created for her specifically during Desert Storm. It allowed her to operate with complete autonomy when the situation demanded it. He'd thought it had died with her. Apparently, legacies didn't die. They just reloaded. Copy, Ghost Protocol. QRF is inbound. Secure your position and stand by for debrief. On the rooftop, Evie saved her mother's rifle. Her hands were steady, but tears streamed down her face. She just killed 12 human beings in 13 minutes. Her mother's lifetime total had been 73 over years of service. Evie had added 12 in one night. You did good, Hargrove said quietly. She would be proud. I killed 12 people, Colonel. You saved hundreds. Every one of those tangos would have slaughtered unarmed candidates, would have destroyed the ammunition depot, would have turned this base into a massacre. He put his hand on her shoulder. Your mother carried the weight of 73. I'll help you carry 12. You don't do this alone. Below them, helicopters approached, quick reaction force finally arriving to a battle that was already over. Evie looked at the rifle in her hands, her mother's rifle, still warm from firing, still carrying the legacy of 73 kills across 2 generations. What happens now? She asked. Now we go explain to a lot of very confused people how a recruit just set a base record. Hargrove smiled. And then we make sure Silas Kane never sells out another soldier. They descended from the rooftop together, the old warrior and the new, connected by a ghost who died 33 years ago, but lived on in every shot her daughter took. In the emergency arms room, the death squad had heard everything over Blake's radio. They stood in silence as the reports came through. 20 tangos neutralized. No friendly casualties beyond the initial breach. Sector 7 clear. All by the woman they'd locked in a bunker. The woman they'd mocked, sabotaged, humiliated. The woman who just saved their lives. We're going to pay for this, Wyatt said quietly. We should pay for this, Blake corrected. Question is whether we learn from it or make excuses. Garrett stared at the door Evie had disappeared through. Her mother was a legend, and we treated her daughter like trash. Then we'll spend the rest of our careers making it right, Blake said, if she gives us the chance. Outside, sirens wailed. Medics rushed to tend the wounded from the initial breach. Security forces swept the perimeter, and somewhere in the chaos, Instructor Silas Kane realized his carefully planned revenge had just collapsed. The woman he'd meant to break had instead exposed him. The ghost he'd tried to destroy had risen from her mother's ashes, and the reckoning was coming. The conference room at Fort Bragg headquarters smelled of stale coffee and tension. It was 0200 hours, 5 hours after the last shot had been fired, and nobody had slept. Colonel Anderson sat at the head of the table, flanked by military police and the base's legal officer. The overhead lights cast harsh shadows across faces that had aged years in a single night. Evelyn Blackwood sat across from them, still in her mud-stained uniform. Her hands were steady on the table, but her eyes carried the weight of what she'd done. 12 kills. 12 human beings who would never go home. The fact that they'd been enemy combatants didn't make the weight any lighter. Colonel Hargrove sat beside her, his cane leaning against his chair. He'd refused medical attention despite the obvious strain the night had put on his 68-year-old body. His jaw was set, protective, ready to defend her against whatever came next. The door opened and 2 MPs entered, escorting Instructor Silas Kane between them. His hands were cuffed behind his back, his face a mask of cold fury barely held in check. They sat him at the opposite end of the table, as far from Evie as the room allowed. Anderson let the silence stretch. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Let everyone feel the weight of what had happened. 12 hostiles, he finally said. Coordinated attack on a United States military installation. They had inside knowledge of our security protocols, patrol routes, response times. They knew exactly when and where to hit us for maximum effect. He pulled out a tablet, turned it so everyone could see. Encrypted communications, financial transactions, a paper trail that led directly to the man in handcuffs. Instructor Kane, you want to explain why your phone was communicating with hostile forces during the attack? Kane's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. I want my lawyer. You'll get one, but first you're going to hear what you did. Anderson pulled out another file. 8 graduates over the past 2 years, all from your classes, all killed in action within 12 months of graduation, all in circumstances that suggest compromised intelligence. He spread photographs across the table. Young faces in dress uniforms, warriors who'd never come home. Sergeant James Rooker, killed in Kandahar, ambushed in a location that should have been secure. Staff Sergeant David Fletcher, KIA in Syria, walked into a trap that someone had baited specifically for him. Corporal Sarah Williams, the only female graduate from your program, found dead in Iraq with evidence suggesting her position had been sold to the highest bidder. Kane's expression didn't change. If anything, his smile grew wider. You think this hurts me? His voice was soft, almost gentle. You think showing me pictures of dead soldiers affects me after what I endured? What you endured? Hargrove's voice cut like a blade. Silas, I tried to get you out. Went to command 3 times. They said it was politically complicated, that we couldn't risk a rescue operation. Politically complicated, Kane laughed, and it was a broken sound. 18 months, Nate. 18 months in that cell. You know what they did to me? What they took from me? I know they broke something in you. I know you came back different. I came back dead. But they didn't have the decency to bury me. Just pinned some medals on my chest and told me to get back to work. While you got promoted, while everyone else got to play hero, Kane's voice rose. So yes, I sold them. Every arrogant little graduate who thought they were special, thought they were better. I watched them die the same way I died in that cage. Slowly, painfully, knowing no one was coming to save them. The room went silent. Even Anderson, who'd seen 3 wars and countless horrors, looked shaken. You murdered 8 American soldiers, Hargrove said quietly, because the system failed you, because I failed you. You're damn right you failed me. Then I'll carry that for the rest of my life, but I won't let you kill anymore. Hargrove stood, leaning on his cane. Evie, tell them what happened tonight. All eyes turned to her. The small woman who'd been the target of Kane's final trap, who'd turned it around and saved the base. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried. He gave me sabotaged equipment, modified my route to isolated terrain, positioned the death squad to break me. When I was locked in that bunker, the attack began. He'd coordinated it, told them exactly when candidates would be scattered and vulnerable, where to hit for maximum casualties. But you survived, Anderson said. How? Colonel Hargrove warned me, and my mother trained me. Anderson leaned forward. Your mother, Captain Diane Blackwood, call sign Ghost. Yes, sir. She died in 1991. Body never recovered from an Iraqi ambush. She survived, sir. Went underground for reasons she never fully explained. Had me in hiding. Trained me from age 5. Everything she knew. Everything Colonel Hargrove taught her. She died 5 years ago from cancer. Anderson pulled out a classified file, one he'd requested during the attack. This file says Ghost had 73 confirmed kills, best sniper this base ever produced. It also says she was posthumously recommended for the Medal of Honor, but the operation was too classified to make it public. He slid a small box across the table. Hargrove opened it, and his hands started shaking. Inside was a Medal of Honor. The citation read, Captain Diane Blackwood, for extraordinary heroism in action against enemy forces. 73 confirmed kills in defense of American lives, awarded posthumously. It took 33 years to declassify the operation enough to issue this, Anderson said. I was going to send it to next of kin. Looks like I just found her. Evie stared at the medal, tears streaming down her face. Her mother's honor, her mother's legacy, finally recognized. She earned it, Hargrove said, his voice thick. Every day, every shot, every life she saved. And you earned it again last night, Anderson said to Evie. 12 kills, 13 minutes, new base record. You saved hundreds of lives, prevented a massacre. Kane laughed again, that broken sound. Perfect. The daughter finishes what the mother started. Ghost Protocol continues. Very poetic. It's not poetry, Evie said, looking at him for the first time. It's duty. My mother didn't kill 73 people because she enjoyed it. She did it because they were threatening people who couldn't protect themselves. Just like I did last night. Just like every graduate you sold out was trying to do when you murdered them. I didn't murder anyone. I just provided information. You pulled the trigger by proxy. That's still murder. Kane leaned back, chains rattling. Prove it in court, with my lawyer present. Until then, I'm done talking. Anderson nodded to the MPs. Take him to the brig, full isolation, 24-hour watch. He doesn't get a shoelace until we're sure he's not a suicide risk. As they hauled Kane to his feet, he looked back at Evie one last time. Your mother spent 33 years hiding, living in shadows. How long before you're doing the same? I won't hide, Evie said. I'll stand in the light and make sure people like you never hide either. They dragged him out, still laughing that broken laugh. The room fell silent again. Anderson rubbed his temples. We have a situation. A recruit just engaged in combat operations, killed 12 hostiles, used a weapon that shouldn't exist, under an authorization protocol that died 33 years ago. Sir, Hargrove began, but Anderson held up his hand. I'm not criticizing. I'm stating facts. Facts that are going to require explanations, reports, reviews. And before all that happens, I need to understand exactly who Evelyn Blackwood is. So she told them. Everything. Her mother's survival, the years in hiding, the training that started before she could read, her mother's death and final instructions to find Hargrove and finish what she'd started, the conspiracy she'd uncovered, Kane's betrayal, the trap she'd walked into willingly. By the time she finished, dawn was breaking through the windows. Christ, Anderson muttered, this is going to generate paperwork for the next decade. Sir, Hargrove said, if I may, Ghost Protocol was created specifically for situations where normal chain of command was insufficient, where someone needed to operate with complete autonomy to save lives. Captain Blackwood operated under it for 3 years. Her daughter operated under it for 1 night, and she saved this base. Anderson studied them both. Then he made a decision. The attack will be classified. The details of the response will be classified. Officially, Quick Reaction Force engaged and eliminated the hostiles. No mention of a single shooter. No mention of Ghost Protocol. Sir, Evie started. Unofficially, Anderson continued, you'll be promoted to instructor, youngest in the program's history. You'll help us rebuild our screening protocols, root out any other potential traitors, and you'll train the next generation of snipers with the same standards your mother used. He pushed the Medal of Honor box toward her. This belongs to you now, not just as her daughter, as someone who earned it in her own right. But it stays classified for now. When the time is right, when operations are declassified, then we'll make it public. Evie picked up the box, held it like it might break. My mother would want it to stay classified. She never did this for glory. Neither did you, which is exactly why you both deserve recognition. Anderson stood, dismissed, Get some sleep. We'll reconvene at 1400 hours for formal debriefing. As they filed out, he called after them. Blackwood, your mother would be proud. She paused at the door. I hope so, sir. I really hope so. At 0600 hours, the death squad assembled in the same conference room. They'd been ordered to report in dress uniforms, which was never a good sign. They stood at attention, waiting, knowing their careers were probably over. Colonel Anderson entered with Hargrove and Evie. The recruits' eyes went to her automatically, and several of them flinched. The woman they'd mocked looked different in the morning light, harder, more defined, like a blade that had been hidden in a decorative sheath. Gentlemen, Anderson began, last night 12 hostile combatants breached this base. They had inside information. They knew our protocols. They were coordinating with Instructor Kane, who has been arrested and charged with treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and accessory to the deaths of 8 American soldiers. Garrett's face went pale. Wyatt looked like he might throw up. You were part of his plan, Anderson continued, selected specifically because of your aggressive tendencies and tribal loyalty. Your hazing of recruit Blackwood was designed to create chaos, to provide cover for Kane's activities, to break someone who was investigating him. Sir, we didn't know, Garrett started. I know you didn't, which is why you're still standing here instead of in cells next to him. But ignorance doesn't excuse behavior. You hazed a fellow soldier, sabotaged equipment, endangered lives through negligence and cruelty. He let that sink in. Under normal circumstances, you'd all be facing courts-martial. But these aren't normal circumstances. And Recruit Blackwood has made a request. He nodded to Evie, who stepped forward. You locked me in a bunker, she said quietly, sabotaged my gear, mocked me, humiliated me, made every moment of qualification hell. They couldn't meet her eyes. But you were also manipulated. Kane selected you because you were exactly what he needed. Aggressive enough to create problems, loyal enough to follow orders, skilled enough to be worth training. She paused. My mother used to say that good soldiers can be forged from flawed materials. It just takes the right hammer. She looked at each of them in turn. Garrett Ashford, you're reduced to private, 6 months. During that time, you'll attend every leadership course available under Master Sergeant Whitfield's supervision. You have talent, but talent without character is worthless. Garrett nodded stiffly. Yes, ma'am. Wyatt Brennan, Cole Hendricks, you're discharged. Your pattern of following without thinking makes you liabilities. However, civilian contractor positions are available for base support. Apply yourselves there. Learn to think independently. Maybe try again in 2 years. They accepted it without protest. Derek Sullivan, dishonorable discharge. Your inability to control impulses under pressure is disqualifying. Seek therapy. Learn discipline. Become someone worth trusting. Derek's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Blake Thornton. Evie's voice softened slightly. You demonstrated moral courage under peer pressure. Tried to warn me despite personal risk. Showed tactical thinking during the crisis. Immediate promotion to specialist. Fast track to ranger school. Your brother would be proud. Blake's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. You earned it by choosing conscience over comfort. She addressed them all again. The lesson here isn't that I'm special. It's not that killing makes you worthy. It's that choosing right over easy, even when it costs, separates soldiers from thugs. Hargrove stepped forward. Dismissed. Ashford, report to Whitfield at 0700. The rest of you, get your affairs in order. As they filed out, Blake paused. Ma'am, what you did last night, the shooting, how do you live with it? Evie was quiet for a long moment. You carry it. Every face, every shot, every life you took to save others. It's not glory, it's weight. And you carry it because it's better than the alternative. Better than letting people die when you could have stopped it. Did your mother teach you that too? She lived it, 73 times. and I watched it consume her slowly. The weight never gets lighter. You just get stronger at carrying it. Blake nodded and left. Evie stood alone in the conference room, staring at the Medal of Honor box on the table. "You did good today," Hargrove said from the doorway. "Firm but fair. Your mother would approve." "Would she? I just ruined 4 careers." "You gave them what they needed, not what they wanted. That's leadership." He walked in, sat heavily in a chair. "Your mother had to make similar decisions. Who to train, who to cut, who could be saved and who couldn't. It's never easy." "How did she live with it? The killing, the decisions, all of it." "She had you. Knowing she was making the world safer for her daughter gave her purpose, gave her a reason to carry the weight." He smiled sadly. "And she had me. Someone who understood, who could share the burden. I don't have a daughter to protect." "No, but you have hundreds of candidates who pass through this program. Each one you train right is a life saved. Each graduate you send out properly prepared is a family that doesn't get a flag. That's your purpose now, the mission, the legacy." Evie picked up the Medal of Honor box. "Colonel, what happens next? Kane's arrested. The conspiracy's exposed. Do I just go back to being a recruit?" "No, you become an instructor. Help us rebuild. Train the next generation the way Ghost trained you, the way I trained her." 6 months after the attack, Evie and Hargrove stood at Arlington National Cemetery. Section 60. The headstone had finally been updated with the truth. Captain Diane Ghost Blackwood, 1965 to 2019. Desert Storm legend. 73 confirmed kills. Medal of Honor. Evie placed 73 white roses at the base, 1 for each of her mother's kills, and 12 red roses for her own. "I kept my promise, Mom," she whispered. "Found Colonel Hargrove, finished what you started, exposed the conspiracy, and I'm training the next generation the way you trained me." Hargrove stood beside her, leaning on his cane. "I kept my promise too, Diane. Watched over her, taught her, helped her become what you knew she could be. She's better than both of us now." They stood in silence as other visitors moved through the cemetery, families visiting their fallen, a reminder of the cost of service. "Colonel," Evie said quietly, "do you ever regret it? The choices you made, the weight you carried?" "Every day, and not once." He smiled. "Your mother used to say the same thing. It's the paradox of service. You carry weight you wish you didn't have to, but you'd rather carry it than let someone else suffer." A young woman approached hesitantly, maybe 19, in civilian clothes but with a military bearing. "Excuse me, are you Instructor Blackwood?" Evie turned. "I am. I'm Paige Caldwell. My aunt served with your mother in Desert Storm. She said if I was serious about the sniper program, I should find you, that you'd understand what it takes." Evie and Hargrove exchanged glances, the cycle continuing, one generation passing knowledge to the next. "What did your aunt tell you about the program?" Evie asked. "That it's not about killing, it's about protecting. That the best snipers are ghosts, that they carry weight others can't see, and that if I'm not ready for that weight, I should walk away now." "Your aunt was right. Are you ready?" Paige looked at the headstone, read the inscription, saw the 73 white roses and 12 red ones, understood what they meant. "I think so, but I know I need guidance." "Then report to Fort Bragg next Monday, 0600 hours. Don't be late." Evie handed her a card with contact information. "And Paige, this isn't a game. This isn't glory. This is sacrifice. Make sure you understand that before you commit." "I understand, ma'am. My aunt made sure of that." Paige left and Evie turned back to the headstone. "She reminds me of you," Hargrove said. "Same determination, same understanding that this is bigger than personal achievement. She reminds me of Mom, which is terrifying and encouraging at the same time." They stood there as the sun set, casting long shadows across the white headstones. Two ghosts honoring another, a legacy passing through generations. You know, Hargrove said, your mother used to stand here sometimes, before you were born, visiting fallen comrades. She'd tell them she was fighting so others wouldn't join them, that every kill was preventing a funeral. Did it help, knowing she was preventing more deaths? It gave her purpose. That's all any of us can ask for, purpose, and someone to share the weight with. Evie took his hand, squeezed it. Thank you for sharing it, Colonel, for helping me carry what Mom left behind. She didn't leave it behind, Evie. She passed it forward. There's a difference. And you're doing the same thing now. Training candidates, mentoring Blake and Garrett. Every person you touch carries a piece of Ghost forward. 1 year after the attack, Fort Bragg held a quiet ceremony. No press, no cameras, just the sniper school staff and select graduates. Colonel Anderson stood at a podium. We're here to honor a tradition of excellence, a legacy of protection, and to recognize those who've carried forward the highest standards of marksmanship and service. He called forward several instructors, presented awards, recognized achievements. Then he paused. There's one more recognition, something that's been classified for too long. He pulled out a display case. Inside, mounted on velvet, was the Medal of Honor, and below it, a photograph. Captain Diane Blackwood in Desert Storm, face finally visible, smiling, young, full of life. Captain Diane Ghost Blackwood, 73 confirmed kills, 3 years of service protecting American lives in the shadows. She was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for extraordinary heroism. But the operation was too classified to announce it publicly. Until now. He gestured to Evie. Her daughter, Instructor Evelyn Blackwood, has carried forward that legacy. Not just in one night of heroism, but in daily service, training the next generation. Maintaining the standards her mother set, being a ghost when she needs to be, and standing in the light when others need to see. Evie stood, not sure what was happening. Anderson continued. We can't change the fact that Ghost served in silence, but we can ensure her legacy is known to those who carry it forward. This medal stays classified to the public. But in this room, among warriors who understand, we honor her sacrifice and her daughter's continuation of it. The room erupted in applause, not polite, formal applause, real respect from people who understood what it cost. Evie walked to the podium, accepted the display case from Anderson, looked at her mother's face, forever young, forever smiling. My mother used to tell me, Evie said, her voice carrying across the room, that the best service is invisible, that if you do your job right, nobody knows you were there. Threats eliminated before they materialize. Lives saved without anyone knowing they were in danger. That's the Ghost way. She looked at the assembled instructors and students. But she also taught me that legacy isn't about individual glory. It's about passing forward what you've learned, making those who come after you better than you were. That's how excellence endures. She held up the Medal of Honor. This represents 73 lives taken to save hundreds more. It represents 3 years of service in conditions I can barely imagine. It represents a mother who died too young, but lived long enough to pass her knowledge to her daughter. And now I pass it to all of you. She set the display case on a table where everyone could see it. This stays here, in the school, a reminder of standards, of sacrifice, of what it means to be a ghost. And when you're struggling, when the weight gets too heavy, when you wonder if it's worth it, come look at this. Remember that someone carried this weight before you, and they did it so you wouldn't have to. In the back of the room, Garrett Ashford stood at attention, no longer the arrogant bully, but a disciplined soldier, learning what leadership truly meant. Blake Thornton sat in the front row, having completed Ranger School and returned to learn directly from Evie. Lieutenant Iris Pemberton, who'd broken 3 school records, sat beside him, and in 3 days, Paige Caldwell would join them. As the ceremony ended and people filed out, Hargrove stood by the display case, studying Diane's photograph. She looks happy there, Evie said, joining him. She was. That was right after her first confirmed kill. Saved a convoy from an ambush. She was terrified and exhilarated and committed all at once. He smiled. She told me later that's when she knew. This was her calling. Not the killing, the protecting. Do you think she's proud of what I've done, what I'm doing? I know she is, because I'm proud. And I knew her well enough to know we'd feel the same. He turned to Evie. You've done more than carry forward her legacy. You've built your own. 12 kills in one night. Multiple instructors trained. Dozens of candidates mentored. A conspiracy exposed. A base saved. That's not her legacy. That's yours. It's both. And it's yours too. You taught her, helped me, connected us across 33 years. We're all part of the same ghost story. Hargrove looked at the Medal of Honor, at the photograph, at the young woman beside him who carried her mother's rifle and her mother's rhythm and her mother's heart. Ghost protocol, he said quietly. 2 generations, 1 mission, same standards, different times. And future generations, Evie asked. Paige, the others coming. They'll carry it forward, add their own chapters, build on what we've started. He picked up his cane, ready to leave. That's how excellence endures, not through one person, through a chain of people committed to the same principles. You're not the end of Ghost Protocol, Evie. You're the bridge to its future. They walked out together, leaving the Medal of Honor on display. A reminder, a standard, a promise that excellence, once established, could endure through dedication and sacrifice. Outside, the sun was setting over Fort Bragg. Candidates ran morning PT in the distance. Rifles fired on the range. The business of training warriors continued as it had for decades. And somewhere in that machinery, invisible but essential, the ghosts worked. Teaching, protecting, carrying weight others couldn't see. The legacy didn't die with Diane Blackwood. It evolved with her daughter. And it would continue with everyone who understood that true service requires becoming invisible when necessary and standing tall when others need to see. Ghost Protocol. Not a person, a principle. And principles, when properly maintained, last forever. They mocked her at sniper qualification, treated her like she didn't belong, locked her in a bunker to break her spirit. Then the range became a battlefield. And the ghosts they tried to destroy saved them all. Her mother had carried 73 kills across 3 years. She'd carried 12 in 13 minutes. And now she'd carry forward the legacy for as long as it took. Because that's what ghosts do. They protect the living, they honor the dead, and they never, ever quit. The end of one story, the beginning of a legend that would never die. Just reload.